The silver ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull shimmering with technology that human eyes had never seen before. Dr. Park Miho watched from the observation deck of the Geneva facility, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his translation device for the third time in 10 minutes. "They're actually here," whispered Dr. Kim Nari beside him, her diplomatic credentials hanging from her neck like a shield against the impossible. 4 months, governments around the world had prepared for this moment, but no amount of planning could have readied them for the reality of first contact. The alien vessel touched down in the designated landing zone with complete silence. No engines roared, no landing thrusters fired. It simply settled onto the Earth as if gravity had gently pulled it home. The watching humans exchanged nervous glances. Their own spacecraft needed massive rockets and tremendous noise just to escape Earth's pull, yet these visitors had arrived with the quiet grace of a leaf falling from a tree. A section of the ship's hull dissolved like morning mist, revealing an opening that hadn't existed moments before. 3 figures emerged, walking with fluid movements that seemed almost like dancing. Ambassador Velthara led the group, her tall, slender form covered in what appeared to be living crystal that shifted colors with each step. Behind her walked 2 smaller figures, their skin bearing intricate patterns that pulsed with soft light. The aliens approached the waiting human delegation with careful, measured steps. Velthara's large, dark eyes studied each human face with curiosity rather than fear. Her translator device, a small gem floating near her throat, began to glow as she prepared to speak. "Greetings, people of Earth." Her voice carried the musical quality of wind chimes, though the words came out in perfect Korean thanks to the translation technology. "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Galactic Confederation. We bring peaceful intentions and hopes for friendship between our peoples." Dr. Miho stepped forward, his rehearsed response suddenly feeling inadequate in the presence of beings from the stars. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. I am Dr. Park Miho and this is Ambassador Kim Nari. We represent the United Nations and all of humanity. We are honored by your visit." The formal greetings continued for several minutes, with both sides following diplomatic protocols that felt strange when applied to beings from different worlds. Velthara's aide, Kixera, recorded everything with a device that projected holographic images into the air, creating a 3-dimensional record of this historic meeting. As they moved inside the Geneva facility, Velthara explained the purpose of their visit. "For many cycles we have observed your world from a distance. Your species shows remarkable potential. You have achieved space travel, developed global communication, and despite your differences, you have gathered here to speak with one voice." Ambassador Nari nodded politely, though she couldn't help but notice how the aliens' words seemed to carry a subtle sense of approval, as if humanity had passed some kind of test. "We are eager to learn about the galaxy beyond our world and our place within it." Over the next several days, the aliens presented what they called their integration package. They showed holographic displays of gleaming cities, advanced medical technology that could cure diseases with a touch, and energy systems that could power entire continents without creating pollution. The human delegates watched in wonder as Velthara demonstrated devices that seemed like magic. "This technology could solve our energy crisis," whispered Dr. Lee Juno, the energy specialist on the human team, as he watched a small device generate enough power to light the entire conference room. "And this medical scanner can detect and treat illnesses before symptoms even appear," added Dr. Ojiho, studying a device no larger than a smartphone that had just performed what would have required a full hospital on Earth. But the aliens made it clear that such gifts came with conditions. "The Confederation operates under strict principles of peace," Velthara explained, her crystal covering shifting to deeper blue tones. "All member species must abandon primitive concepts such as warfare and territorial disputes. Conflicts must be resolved through meditation and diplomatic discussion. Violence is not permitted under any circumstances." The human delegates exchanged glances. They had expected such requirements, though hearing them stated so clearly still sent a chill through the room. General Yoon Dae-hoon, attending as a military observer, kept his expression neutral, but his fingers drummed silently against his leg. "We understand," Ambassador Nari replied smoothly. "Humanity is ready to embrace a more peaceful way of existence. We have seen too much suffering caused by conflict. The chance to join a galactic community dedicated to peace is exactly what our species needs." Velthara's patterns brightened, showing what the humans had learned was a sign of pleasure among her people. "Your quick acceptance shows wisdom. Most species require much longer to understand the benefits of abandoning their violent past." The negotiations moved surprisingly quickly. Within a week, preliminary agreements were signed, establishing Earth as a candidate for Confederation membership. The aliens would provide basic technology and begin the integration process immediately. Human representatives would visit other Confederation worlds to see examples of successful peaceful societies. As the alien ship prepared to depart, Velthara felt satisfied with their mission's success. These humans seemed more adaptable than most species during first contact. They asked intelligent questions, showed proper respect for superior civilizations, and most importantly, they appeared genuinely committed to abandoning their primitive ways. The integration should proceed smoothly, she told Kixera as their ship lifted off from Earth. They seem eager to evolve beyond their violent nature. What Velthara didn't see were the encrypted messages already flowing between world capitals. The moment the alien ship left Earth's atmosphere, secure communications networks activated. Military commanders, scientists, and intelligence officers who had remained hidden during the negotiations now emerged to begin their real work. President Kang Suyin addressed the secret gathering of world leaders via quantum-encrypted video link. Phase 1 is complete. They believe we're grateful primitives ready to abandon everything that made us survivors. Now we begin the real preparation. The aliens had made a critical error. They assumed that humanity's diplomatic face represented their true nature, never suspecting that a species shaped by millions of years of survival might have learned the value of appearing harmless while preparing for the worst. 6 months had passed since the aliens left Earth, and Inspector Morvex was beginning to suspect that something was wrong. His ship approached the human colony on Mars, where reports indicated minor administrative delays in implementing Confederation protocols. Such delays were common among new species, but the pattern of human responses had been unusual. Colony Administrator Lee Juno waited at the landing platform, his smile bright and welcoming. Inspector Morvex, welcome to New Sol Colony. We apologize for any confusion in our recent reports. Please, let me show you around our facilities. As they walked through the colony's corridors, Morvex noted how efficiently everything operated. The humans moved with purpose, their equipment hummed with quiet power, and the entire settlement felt more advanced than it should have been for such a young species. His scanner detected energy signatures that seemed familiar yet different from standard Confederation technology. Your manufacturing capabilities have improved remarkably since our last visit, Morvex observed, examining what appeared to be an atmospheric processor. The device looked like Confederation technology, but subtle modifications made it more efficient than the original design. We're quick learners, Juno replied, that strange human facial expression never leaving his features. We study your generous gifts very carefully and try to understand how they work. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Ojiho demonstrated their latest achievements. She showed Morvex power generators that produced 30% more energy than standard Confederation models, communication arrays with enhanced range and manufacturing equipment that operated at impossible speeds. We simply optimized your designs for human industrial processes, she explained with pride. Our engineers worked day and night to understand every circuit and component. We wanted to show our appreciation for your generosity by making improvements. Morvex felt increasingly uncomfortable. New species typically struggled for decades to understand basic Confederation technology, yet humans had not only mastered it but improved upon it in mere months. His instruments detected modifications in every piece of equipment, changes that should have been impossible for a species that had never seen such technology before. That evening, alone in his temporary quarters, Morvex accessed the colony's communication logs. His translation software worked slowly through coded human languages, but patterns began to emerge that made his bioluminescent patches flicker with alarm. References to something called Phase 2 appeared repeatedly. Discussions of contingency protocols and optimal strike capabilities filled the message archives. Meanwhile, on Luna Base, another inspector was having similar experiences. Dr. Bay Hiram showed him what appeared to be a standard medical facility, but scanner technician Kilnex detected hidden modifications in every piece of equipment. Medical scanners had been enhanced with capabilities that exceeded anything in Confederation databases. Manufacturing units produced materials that were stronger and lighter than standard alloys. Your progress is impressive, the inspector admitted, though suspicion colored his tone. How did you achieve such rapid advancement? Human determination, Bay replied simply. When we commit to something, we give it everything we have. Learning from you has been our highest priority. Back on Earth, the real work continued in facilities the aliens had never seen. Deep underground, teams of engineers and scientists worked around the clock to understand every aspect of Confederation technology. They had discovered that the aliens' devices relied on predictable energy patterns, centralized control systems, and communication networks with exploitable weaknesses. General Yoon Dae-hoon reviewed progress reports from research teams around the world. Status report on the shield generators? He asked during the secure video conference. Complete reverse engineering finished last week, reported Dr. Choi Min-ji from the Seoul Research Facility. We can now build them from scratch using Earth materials. More importantly, we understand how to overload them. One shield generator can become a weapon powerful enough to destroy a city block. Excellent. What about their communication systems? Agent Han Suk-min appeared on screen from his undercover position aboard a Confederation ship. Their entire network uses quantum encryption that they believe is unbreakable. They're wrong. We've been reading their messages for 2 months. They're planning something general. This integration was never meant to be peaceful. President Kang Soo-yin joined the conference from her secure bunker beneath the Blue House. Our intelligence confirms it. The Confederation uses this same pattern on every species they integrate. First comes the technology and the peace treaties. Then comes dependency. Finally comes control. They turn species into servants without firing a single shot. The truth was more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Intercepted Confederation communications revealed that Earth was being used as a testing ground for a new integration protocol. The aliens planned to gradually remove human independence by making them completely dependent on Confederation technology and resources. Once humanity could no longer survive without alien support, they would become another enslaved species in the Confederation's empire. They're not peaceful explorers, Dr. Choi explained to the assembled world leaders. They're predators who use kindness as a weapon. They've done this to hundreds of species across the galaxy. Inspector Morvex submitted his report with growing unease, though he still didn't understand the full scope of what he had witnessed. Human adaptation rates exceed all Confederation models, he wrote. Their modifications to our technology show understanding that should be impossible for their development level. Recommend immediate assessment of compliance protocols. What he didn't know was that his own communication had been intercepted before it reached Confederation space. Human intelligence services had been monitoring all alien communications since the first day of contact. Every message was analyzed, decoded, and forwarded to military planners who were preparing for the inevitable confrontation. As Morvex's ship departed Mars, Colony Administrator Juno watched from the observation deck. His friendly smile disappeared the moment the alien vessel left sensor range. Phase 2 is confirmed, he reported to Earth Command. They suspect something is wrong, but they still don't understand what they're facing. How much longer do we maintain the deception? Until we're ready, came the reply from General Yoon. The Confederation has never faced an enemy that could think strategically. They're about to learn why that was a mistake. The trap was set, and the aliens were walking directly into it, blinded by their own assumptions about human nature. Xenobiologist Hixera had studied primitive species for most of her career, but the human historical records were giving her nightmares. What had started as routine analysis of Earth's cultural development had become a terrifying journey through the darkest chapters of galactic history. Commander Zilmoth, you need to see this immediately, she called to her superior, her voice shaking as she projected holographic data in the Confederation analysis chamber. The three-dimensional images showed massive explosions, burning cities, and warfare on a scale that defied comprehension. These can't be accurate readings, Zilmoth replied, his bioluminescent patches flickering with confusion as he studied the data. Humans call this the Second World War. The casualty figures show 60 million deaths. No species survives conflicts of that magnitude. Hixera's tentacles trembled as she accessed more files. It gets worse, Commander. This was just one war among hundreds. Look at this document they call The Art of War. It's over 2,000 years old, but the strategic principles are more sophisticated than our current military doctrine. They have concepts we don't even have words for. The holographic display showed tactical formations, supply line management, psychological warfare techniques, and battle strategies that made Confederation military planning look like children's games. Every human conflict had been analyzed, studied, and improved upon by the next generation of warriors. They call it learning from history, Hixera explained, pulling up more records. Every defeat taught them new lessons. Every victory was examined for weaknesses. They've been perfecting the art of warfare for their entire existence as a species. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Choi Min-ji was leading humanity's xenological research team in the opposite direction. While aliens studied human history, humans had been systematically mapping every weakness in Confederation society and technology. The results were more encouraging than anyone had dared hope. "They're not warriors," she reported to the Global Defense Council during their daily briefing. "They're administrators with advanced technology." Every Confederation conflict in their records was resolved through overwhelming resource advantage or diplomatic surrender. They have no concept of asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, or strategic deception. Agent Hans Suchman, still undercover aboard Confederation vessels, provided the most valuable intelligence. His reports painted a picture of a civilization that had grown soft through centuries of easy victories. Their entire military philosophy assumes enemies will announce themselves and fight according to established rules. They've never faced an opponent who uses misdirection as a primary weapon. The breakthrough came when human cryptographers finally cracked high-level Confederation communications. The messages they intercepted revealed the true scope of the alien deception. Earth had never been intended as a partner in galactic civilization. It was a testing ground for a new method of conquest that the Confederation called peaceful integration. President Kang Suyin convened an emergency session with world leaders after reading the translated communications. "They've done this to 47 other species," she announced grimly. "The pattern is always the same. First contact, technology sharing, gradual dependency, then complete control. The species that resist are wiped out. Those that submit become slave labor." The intercepted messages detailed the Confederation's long-term plans for humanity. Earth's resources would be stripped to fuel their expansion. Human populations would be relocated to work colonies. Earth itself would become another administrative center in their growing empire. The timeline called for complete human subjugation within 10 years. "They never intended peaceful integration," added Foreign Minister Shin Dong-hyun, his usually calm demeanor cracking with anger. "This was always conquest, just delayed until we were completely dependent on their technology." Chinese Premier Li Meiying summed up the global sentiment during the secure video conference. "Then they're going to learn why predators should be careful when they hunt survivors." The most revealing discovery came from Korean linguist Dr. Bae Hiram's analysis of Confederation languages. Her research had uncovered a fundamental flaw in alien thinking that explained their consistent success against other species. They have no words for insurgency, guerrilla warfare, or strategic retreat, she reported to the assembled military commanders. These concepts literally don't exist in their culture. They've never encountered a species that fights wars the way humans do. Her linguistic analysis revealed that Confederation society had evolved from a single dominant species that had conquered their homeworld through superior technology rather than tactics. They had then applied the same approach to every other species they encountered. Raw technological superiority had always been enough to ensure victory. "They fight like chess players," General Yoon Dae-hoon observed after reviewing the linguistic data. "Every move is planned, every strategy is formal, and every battle follows predictable patterns. They've never faced an opponent who plays by different rules." The final piece of the puzzle came from intercepted alien communications discussing Earth's unusual behavioral patterns. Confederation analysts were struggling to understand why humans had accepted their terms so readily, yet were making modifications to alien technology at an unprecedented rate. "Subject species shows concerning adaptation rates," read one decoded message. "Recommend accelerated timeline for Phase 2 implementation. Extended observation period may allow development of resistance capabilities." Commander Zilmatha's response was equally telling: "Impossible. Preliminary species lack strategic thinking necessary for coordinated resistance. Continue standard protocol." Dr. Choi smiled grimly as she finished translating the alien communications. "They're so convinced of their own superiority that they can't recognize a strategic deception even when they're living inside it." The revelation was complete. The Confederation had made the same mistake that had doomed countless predators throughout Earth's history. They had assumed that their prey was helpless simply because it appeared cooperative. They had confused human diplomacy with human surrender, never realizing that humanity's greatest strength had always been the ability to appear weak while preparing for war. "Phase 3 is approved," President Kang announced to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "It's time to show them what humanity learned during all those centuries of warfare. They wanted to test their new integration protocol on us. Let's give them some data they'll never forget." The trap was ready to spring, and the aliens were about to discover the dangerous truth about human nature that they had ignored for too long. Admiral Thekvarn stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching 200 Confederation warships move through space in perfect formation. The largest enforcement fleet ever assembled was approaching Earth's solar system, ready to begin what their commanders called corrective integration procedures. Intelligence reports suggested the humans had developed some basic resistance capabilities, but nothing that superior firepower and advanced shields couldn't handle within a few days. Standard suppression pattern as we enter their system, he ordered his tactical officer. Target their primary industrial centers and government facilities first. Once their leadership surrenders, cleanup operations should take less than one solar cycle. The Confederation had used this same approach successfully on dozens of worlds. Overwhelming force, quick strikes against command centers, and demands for immediate surrender. Most species gave up within hours rather than face complete destruction. Humans would be no different. The first sign that something was wrong came when Kixnara, his sensor operator, detected movement on the edge of the solar system. "Sir, we're reading multiple contacts near the asteroid belt. Energy signatures suggest human vessels, but they shouldn't have been able to detect our fleet at this range." "Impossible," Thekvarn replied confidently. "Their technology is barely capable of interplanetary travel. They must be using some kind of primitive early warning system." What the Admiral didn't know was that Captain Song Arium was coordinating the human response from her command ship, hidden deep within an asteroid field that had been modified over the past 6 months. Her vessel looked like a standard human destroyer from the outside, but its core systems were pure Confederation technology, rebuilt and improved by human engineers who had studied every weakness in alien design. "All units, implement Protocol Taiguk," she broadcast on encrypted channels that used quantum frequencies the Confederation had never encountered. "Remember, they expect us to meet them in open battle. We're going to disappoint them badly." The Confederation fleet entered the solar system expecting to find human ships arranged in defensive lines around Earth and Mars, ready for the kind of formal battle that had decided conflicts for thousands of years. Instead, they found empty space and silence. "Where are their forces?" demanded Admiral Thekvarn as his scanners showed no major human military presence. All intelligence suggested they had been building warships. The answer came in the form of sudden, devastating attacks from directions the Confederation had never considered. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids, emerged from the shadows of moons, and materialized from what seemed like empty space itself. They struck with weapons that shouldn't have existed, then vanished before return fire could be targeted. "How are they coordinating these attacks without detectable communications?" Thekvarn shouted as another wing of his ships suffered catastrophic damage from concealed human positions. "Our sensors show no command signals." Commander Park Young-ho was leading the Luna-based defense forces in what human military historians would later call the Invisible War. His fighters used modified Confederation stealth technology combined with human tactical doctrines that treated space like an ocean to be navigated through patience, surprise, and careful positioning. "Strike Team Alpha, target their communication arrays," he ordered through a quantum channel that existed only for microseconds at a time. "Strike Team Beta, focus on their shield generators. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their ships. We're trying to blind and confuse them." The human strategy was unlike anything in Confederation military records. Instead of seeking decisive battles, they focused on disrupting enemy coordination. Instead of protecting territory, they protected their ability to strike from unexpected angles. Instead of fighting fair, they fought to win. Admiral Thekvarn watched in growing horror as his perfectly organized fleet began to fall apart under attacks that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. His ships were being damaged by weapons that used Confederation energy principles but in ways that no Confederation scientist had ever considered possible. "Sir, they've turned our own technology against us," reported Kixnara, her voice breaking as she watched their most advanced warship fall to what appeared to be a modified mining drone that had somehow overloaded its shields from the inside. The decisive moment came when General Lim Jaiwan activated Phase 3 of Earth's defense plan from his command bunker buried deep beneath the Korean mountains. Every piece of Confederation technology that humans had gratefully accepted over the past months contained hidden modifications that had been carefully concealed until this moment. Communication networks became weapons that sent overload pulses through Confederation systems. Medical equipment turned into electromagnetic pulse generators that disabled nearby ships. Even the atmospheric processors on human colonies became orbital bombardment platforms that could target enemy vessels with deadly accuracy. "Sir, our entire fleet network is compromised," Kixnara reported with panic in her voice. "They're using our own communication systems to attack us. Every ship that connects to the network becomes vulnerable to their weapons." As Confederation forces tried to retreat and regroup, they discovered that humans had prepared for that possibility too. Captain Song's hidden fleet emerged from asteroid fields and planetary shadows to cut off escape routes. The aliens found themselves trapped in a solar system that had become a carefully designed killing field. "This is impossible," Admiral Thekvarn muttered as he watched his invasion force being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight according to any known principles of warfare. "They're using tactics that don't exist in any military database." The final blow came when Captain Song broadcast on all Confederation frequencies, her voice carried by the same communication networks the aliens had thought were secure. "This is Earth Defense Command to all Confederation forces. You came to our home believing we were primitives to be conquered. You have learned otherwise. Withdraw immediately or discover what humanity does to threats against our survival." In less than 6 hours, the largest military force in Confederation history had been reduced to scattered, damaged ships fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. The trap had worked perfectly, and the aliens were finally beginning to understand the dangerous truth about human nature that they had ignored for too long. 3 months after the failed invasion, former Ambassador Velthara sat across from President Kang Suyin in what had once been the Geneva Treaty Room. The chairs were the same, the table looked identical, but everything else had changed completely. The power balance between their species had shifted so dramatically that Velthara barely recognized the confident woman sitting across from her. "Your Confederation made a serious mistake," Kang said, her voice calm but firm. "You thought that our willingness to talk meant we were weak. You confused our desire for peace with an inability to fight." Velthara's crystalline translator struggled with human concepts that had no equivalent in Confederation languages. Words like strategic deception and long-term planning came across as confusing mixtures of unrelated ideas. "Your species lied to us from the very beginning. How can we possibly trust anything you say now?" "Because now you understand what happens when that trust is broken," replied Foreign Minister Shin Dong-hyun, gesturing toward a holographic display showing the wreckage of Confederation ships still floating in Earth's solar system. "We didn't want war, Ambassador, but we prepared for it. We hoped for friendship, but we planned for betrayal. That's something your people never learned to do." The terms humanity offered were completely unlike anything in Confederation history. Rather than demanding tribute or territory, humans proposed something they called a mutual defense agreement. Species who chose genuine partnership would receive human military advisors and access to defensive technology. Those who preferred to remain independent would be left alone entirely. But any species that attempted conquest or forced integration would face the combined military strength of humanity's growing coalition. "We can offer your people something the Confederation never could," explained Defense Coordinator Jang Mira to the group of alien diplomats who had requested this meeting. "We can guarantee that your species will survive. We've learned that sometimes protecting peace requires the willingness to fight for it." The concept seemed to break something fundamental in Confederation thinking. Velthara's bioluminescent patches flickered erratically as she tried to process the idea. "But violence creates more violence. Warfare destroys civilization. This has always been true throughout galactic history." Dr. Choi Minji, now serving as humanity's chief xenological advisor, leaned forward with patience in her voice. "That's true when violence is used for conquest or control. But violence used to protect innocent people serves a different purpose entirely. Humans learned this lesson over thousands of years of history. The most surprising development came from species that had been peacefully integrated by the Confederation decades earlier. The Kethmori delegation, led by historian Wixera, had traveled across half the galaxy to request human protection from their supposedly benevolent overlords. "The Confederation calls itself enlightened because it doesn't wage traditional wars," Wixera explained to UN Secretary-General Kim Tae-hoon through her translator device. "But they never needed to fight. They simply made resistance impossible through economic control and technological dependence. Your people proved that resistance is always possible if you're willing to prepare for it." Word of humanity's victory had spread throughout the galaxy faster than Confederation authorities could contain it. Species that had accepted integration were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about their agreements. Worlds that had been considering Confederation membership were suddenly requesting meetings with human representatives instead. 17 species have formally requested our protection in the past month, reported Intelligence Director Park Juno during the weekly security briefing. 23 others have asked for military advisors. The Confederation's entire integration system is falling apart. The irony wasn't lost on President Kang as she reviewed the diplomatic requests piling up on her desk. They spent centuries convincing the galaxy that strength and aggression were primitive traits that civilized species had evolved beyond. Now those same species are begging for protection from someone stronger than their civilized oppressors. 6 months after first contact, Ambassador Velthara found herself in the unprecedented position of negotiating with a species that had completely outmaneuvered the galaxy's most advanced civilization. The diplomatic protocols she had studied for decades were useless when dealing with beings who treated warfare as just another form of communication. Your people's capacity for deception and violence should make you the greatest threat to galactic peace, she admitted during one of their final negotiation sessions. Yet species across the galaxy are requesting your protection. I don't understand how this is possible. President Kong smiled with what Velthara had learned was genuine warmth rather than the diplomatic mask humans wore when they were planning something unpleasant. Perhaps that's because we learned to use those dangerous capabilities in service of something larger than ourselves. A species that knows how to fight doesn't always choose to fight. But when they do choose violence, it's usually for a very good reason. The negotiations concluded with an agreement that would have been impossible under the old Confederation system. Humanity would establish defensive partnerships with any species that requested protection. In exchange, those species would maintain their independence and cultural identity while contributing to a mutual defense network that could respond to threats anywhere in the galaxy. As Velthara prepared to return to Confederation space with humanity's final terms, she found herself reflecting on the expensive lesson her people had learned. They had encountered something that their scientists had declared impossible. A species whose willingness to use violence had made them the most reliable protectors of peace the galaxy had ever known. The dangerous truth about human nature, she dictated into her final report, is not that they are violent. It's that they learn to channel that violence into protecting others rather than conquering them. In attempting to subjugate humanity, the Confederation created their most formidable opponent and, perhaps, the only hope for genuine security in an uncertain galaxy. The balance of power had shifted permanently, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had emerged not as conquerors, but as guardians of a new kind of peace built on strength rather than submission.